He's a security analyst for the Clarion project. Ryan, welcome back to the show. Good to have you. And Ryan, as we heard from Nina, that the Russian... Nice to be with you again, Ryan. The Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov saying that he thinks the U.S. intends to stay in Syria for a long time. Now, Russia, as we know, has been the go-to power in Syria. The U.S. has taken a more hands-off approach as established under Obama, but we are seeing signs of more U.S. involvement recently. How do you see this developing?
Well, the U.S. is more of the dominant player in this part of Syria that the Kurds refer to as Rojava, where it's Kurdish majority, but then there are other minorities that are allied with the Kurds in that area, including Christians. And so the U.S. does intend to have a long-term presence there unless the cost-benefit analysis changes. And the short-term objective of this attack on the Syrian Democratic Forces, which is the Kurdish-led rebel forces allied with the U.S., is basically for Assad and Russia to pick pieces of territory in the oil-rich area of Syria, because right now everyone is kind of moving at a quick pace to figure out who is going to control what as ISIS is destroyed. But more broadly, I think what you may be looking at are the fruits of Russia backing and trying to bring together sort of a jihadi super alliance, with the Iranians leading the Shiite Islamists and Turkey leading the Sunni Islamists. And that, for me, has much bigger implications than the issue of who controls what within Syria and who has more oil.
Well, let's talk about those implications, because they're certainly going to be very dramatic for the region, certainly for Israel as well. Do you think this forces the U.S. to take a more offensive approach against Russia?
It's going to force the U.S. to at least take a diplomatically more strict position towards Russia. But we've seen a big division within the Trump administration between, for example, the Secretary of State taking a harsher tone on Russia, and then President Trump dials it back. And when it comes to Turkey, we've seen a disturbingly soft approach towards Turkey from the Trump administration that comes down to really just being bizarre to me. Because when the Turkish government says that the U.S. with the Kurds are engaging in a new crusade, that is, in the Islamic context, a declaration of war or jihad. If you say the United States is waging a crusade, you're saying that you are at war with the United States. And that's what Turkey has been saying. But in recent days, the Turkish message has changed to not only threaten U.S. troops in Syria, not only to essentially declare war on the U.S., but to say that U.S. forces in Syria also threaten Iran and Russia. So why is the Turkish government suddenly so concerned about the defense of Iran and Russia? Something's going on here, and it's between those three parties coming together.
Well, Ryan, this is even more problematic considering that Turkey is a NATO ally here, and the relations have been strained significantly for a while under Erdogan. They're on opposing sides of the conflict in Syria. Are we at a breaking point now between the U.S. and Turkey with all of this kind of rhetoric, and with the fact that the U.S. is not going to get out of the way of the Turks hitting the Kurds in Manjib? The U.S. is saying they're not going to step back. Have we reached breaking point between the Turkish and the Americans?
We are certainly at a point of unprecedented tension, because to have Turkey talking about an Ottoman slap, which means that Erdogan is no longer even pretending he doesn't want to resurrect the Ottoman Empire. That means that you are now at a point where one side's going to have to back down. Before, there would be tension, but it would be over something like human rights or Turkish support of terrorism, and the U.S. would look the other way. When it comes to threatening American troops on the ground in Syria, we can't look the other way. So we are at a decisive point now in the U.S.-Turkish relationship, and what I believe may be going on right now is that Russia was backing, even though they're supposedly mercenaries, Russia was backing the Assad regime in targeting the allies of the U.S. and U.S. forces training them to test how we respond to that type of thing, because Turkey is talking about doing the same thing. So it makes sense to have the Russian-backed Assad forces try it first, see how the Trump administration responds, and before Turkey makes that decision.
And Ryan, you also get the sense that the powers in the region are also testing Israel. We certainly saw indications of that over the weekend, and there are now some new developments in the Israeli jet that was shot down on Saturday. Damascus is warning Israel about any future actions inside Syria. Let's take a listen.
Have full confidence the aggressor will be greatly surprised because it thought this war of attrition Syria has been exposed to for 7 years, has made it incapable of confronting attacks. What happened last week has unsubstantiated such beliefs, and God willing, they will see more surprises whenever they try to attack Syria.
Ryan, more surprises. What do you make of that?
Things are really heating up right now. I think what you're seeing are the different anti-American actors saying to each other, look, ISIS is about to be defeated. We've got to come together because this civil war in Syria is going to go on forever. And who's the greater enemy? It's the West. So for me, this is about Russia backing Turkey and the Sunni Islamists and Iran and the Shiite Islamists into a grand coalition to compete with and really threaten the U.S., the Kurds and the minorities like the Christians allied with the Kurds, and then Israel and the Arab states that are geopolitically aligned with the United States right now. It's a battle for the region.
So, Ryan, when did this boil over? As you say, it does seem as though the sides are being formed, pivoting the U.S., Israel, the Kurds against potentially the Russians, the Iranians, the Syrians, and the Turks. When does this come to a head? What's going to push it there?
Well, what remains to be seen is what's going to happen with al-Qaeda, because Turkey is providing support to al-Qaeda in Syria, but they may have their own proxies that they prefer to control portions of Syria controlled by al-Qaeda right now. So it's possible that you could see a conflict delayed because everyone gangs up on al-Qaeda, which has a much larger force than ISIS. But alternatively, you could just have an all-out proxy war. I would not rule out the possibility that Turkey backs Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas-type terrorists and attacking Arabs that are aligned with the U.S., like Saudi Arabia, at the same time that Iran backs terrorist proxies like Shiite terrorists in Saudi Arabia's eastern province, where there's a Shiite minority and 90% of the oil is located. That's a tempting target for Iran. So a lot of it's going to depend on this testing that's going on of the Trump administration right now. They're trying to figure out where the Trump administration's red lines are.
Yeah, I wouldn't push the president on that one. I think he is someone that does draw a line and then takes action if it's crossed. Ryan, appreciate it as always. Ryan Mauro, security analyst with the Clarion Project. Thanks as always for your time.